Hi, friends. My name is Brianna, and welcome back to Brianna's Bookshelf. So, today we are doing my June wrap up, and I read 10 books in the month of June, which is actually really, really high for me. So, I am very happy with that. So, let's talk about all the books that I read this month from lowest rated to highest rated. First off, at 3 stars, we have A Good Person by Kirsten King. I read this for the Women's Wrong Support Group, which is Brooklyn's book club, and I was on her live show to talk about this. So I will link that down below if you're interested in hearing more of my thoughts. But I felt like pretty mid about this, to be honest. I do feel like my mindset when I was reading it impacted my enjoyment level because I was not having the best week while I was reading this. And then our main character Lillian in this book, she's extremely narcissistic and does like the craziest things. And it was kind of like making me sad a little bit. Whereas I feel like if I read it when I was in a better headspace, I probably would have found it funnier than I did. So I think it was kind of a me problem, but I also feel like this isn't my perfect type of book anyhow. But yes, we're following Lillian, who is a bit of a narcissist, to say the least, and she's extremely manipulative. And she basically breaks up with this guy that she's seeing, and she does a internet hex on him, and then he dies, and she gets involved in the criminal case and is like trying to kind of figure out what happened to him, clear her name, making worse and worse choices, and it's like watching a train wreck, really. So I think if you enjoy that type of thing, you will definitely enjoy this. Next is The Book of Azrael by Amber V. Nicole, and I also gave this one 3 stars. This is the first book in a fantasy romance series, and I feel like I've heard a lot of good things about this series in general, so I was very interested to try it. However, after reading the first book, I just don't think it's quite for me, so I probably won't continue. But basically, in this first book, we're following Diana, who is very different than the usual fantasy romance female main character. She is actually like a demon kind of creature, and she was basically turned into a demon when she and her sister were on their deathbeds in order to save her sister, like, and made this deal with this demon king. So now she's this demon creature that has been doing his bidding and enacting his revenge for hundreds of years. And she's very like bloodthirsty and cruel. But of course, she gets challenged by basically like the last of the gods who people thought wasn't real, but he comes down to basically take care of the realm because there's been more and more instances of everyone looking for this book called the Book of Azrael, which is supposed to have to do with like magic and the different magical beings in this world. And of course, he and Diana intersect paths and have some conflict and then have to work together a little bit. But I feel like I just didn't enjoy this because number one, I did not love the world building. I feel like when I'm reading fantasy, I need to know not just like what the magic is and what the creatures are, but also what the world looks like and like descriptions of the scenery and the buildings they're in and all that sort of stuff. I don't feel like there was very much of that in this book, other than like in the very beginning, it described the area where Diana was in the first place, but then as we like went to different cities and things, there wasn't much description. So I couldn't really imagine this world in my head at all. And then I also just did not enjoy the romance or the characters together. I just didn't feel like there was any chemistry. So when it got to the part where there was finally like this declaration of love, I just kind of felt nothing about it, which is, of course, a reason to not like it because why would I enjoy a romance if I am not feeling the romance? So unfortunately, that was a no for me. Then we have The Willows by Algernon Blackwood, and I gave this 3.5 stars. And I read this for the Classic Scares Book Club, which is the book club that I host alongside Brooklyn, Angel, and Alicia. And we talked about this book in a live show on my channel this month. So if you missed that, I will link it below so you can hear our full thoughts. But this is a very tiny little novella, and this is considered a horror classic. And it is basically following these two men who are on a voyage down the Danube River together. and they start to feel more and more terrified as they go on this journey. They're very isolated from everyone else, and they start to feel like the willow trees are possessed by some sort of entity, basically. And it's a weird one to describe. And I had actually read this before. This was a reread. The first time I read it, I gave it 3 stars. This time I gave it 3.5. So my enjoyment did go up a little bit. I feel like this is just definitely more cosmic horror, which is not quite my thing, but I appreciate it for what it is, and I really like some of the quotes and the descriptions. I think my next rating is going to be somewhat shocking to some people, but I read Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. I know. I feel like everyone is giving this book 5 stars, so I feel like I'm in the minority. And don't get me wrong, I did like it. I just didn't love it. When I first started it, I had higher hopes. Like from the beginning, I was really loving it, so I thought perhaps it would be a higher rated book. But my issue with it is as I kept going, I started to get tired of the humor that was in this book. The humor style just didn't really jive with me, or like I could take it for a little while and it could be kind of funny, but then it just felt too repetitive to me as things went on. And I kind of slowly just started to lose a little bit of interest. So, yeah, unfortunately, 3.5, but I still really appreciate how this book is different from other fantasy and sci fi books that I've read. And I enjoyed the characters and the setup. It just was not 100% for me. But I think that everyone who hasn't read this should try it because so many people love it. There's a good chance that you will. Next up is Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder, and I gave this book 4 stars. This is a kind of young adult fantasy romance classic of sorts. This is a book that a lot of people have said inspired Sarah J. Maas to write her books, and I definitely see the comparisons between this and the Throne of Glass series. What I liked about this was that it took on some really difficult topics for a young adult novel, and I feel like the world and the characters were really well fleshed out, so it felt like it had a strong fantasy aspect to it for sure. And the romance was extremely slow burn, and it was not like obvious at all who the love interest was in the beginning, which I really appreciate because I do feel like most fantasy romance books set up who the love interest is going to be right away. In this, I feel like we couldn't tell who the love interest was until way into it, and like the main character didn't even realize the feelings that she was forming for him until she was kind of in the thick of it. And I liked that. I feel like it was very different and it made their relationship feel more natural and more based in emotion and their personalities rather than lust. And so I thought that was really refreshing. Next is Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang, and I gave this 4 stars. Now I have officially read all of R.F. Kuang's published works that are out so far. I'm happy with that accomplishment. However, this is unfortunately the first book of hers that I've given less than 5 stars. But I still enjoy this. I just think it wasn't exactly my thing. It was good, but I wasn't obsessed because I think because this is literary fiction and it didn't quite hit home for me. But this is basically about this girl who is an aspiring author and she is friends with a really well known Asian author. And our main character, who is white by the way, her friend, the Asian author, dies, and she then steals her manuscript and passes it off as her own. And there's a lot of discussion around race, and there's a lot of unlikable characters in this book. And I appreciate the conversations it was having. I just didn't have like the most fun time ever reading it, but I still really did enjoy it. Next up is From Below by Darcy Coates. This was my first Darcy Coates read, and I'm very happy to be giving it 4 stars. This is a horror novel that is about a dive team that is going underwater to make an expedition to this sunken ship. It's like a fictional Titanic, and they're the first people to be able to dive there, and they are making a documentary about it. But things quickly get really stressful because some of the team members are not as prepared for this dive as they should be. Of course, they are deep, deep underwater and they are in this very claustrophobic space. You have the claustrophobic aspect, the underwater aspect, and then some other things end up getting thrown in as well. So I feel like this had so much good suspense, and I just really loved the direction that it went in. I feel like it wasn't afraid to go to the place that I wanted it to go to, and so I really had fun with it. Moving on to my 5 stars, I actually had 3 5-star reads this month, which feels incredible. But the first one is a little unusual, I suppose. So I will preface this by saying I feel like I definitely rate based on enjoyment. And I don't think that all of my 5 stars are created equally, because sometimes a 5 star is just like I had the best time ever reading this, but obviously it's not a literary masterpiece. And this first book I'm going to talk about falls in this category. It is, in fact, The Dare by Harley Laroux. I never thought I was going to read this book. I've heard about it on Book Talk for so long and really just thought it was not for me. It is basically a prequel to this series that is like a dark romance series by Harley Laroux. And in this prequel, we're following our main character who bullied this boy when she was in high school. She was like a mean girl. And then we're following her in college as she's at a party and she's playing a game, and this guy is there, the guy who she bullied, and he dares her to be his slave for the night. And there's like really nothing more to say about it. It was just like a super fun time, and I enjoyed it so much more than I thought I would, and like immediately wanted to continue the series. So I don't know if that sounds like something you might be into. Maybe try it. It's a lot of fun. My second 5 star book of the month was Caught Up by Liz Tomford. This is the third book in the Windy City series, which is a sports romance series. And this book is following baseball player Kai Rhodes, who is a single father, and Miller Montgomery, who is the daughter of the baseball team's coach. She is also a James Beard Award winning chef. And Miller is just like the coolest female main character. She was so independent and such a badass. And then Kai was so sweet, so family oriented. It really kind of felt like opposites attracted at the beginning, but their story was so sweet. They actually have become some of my favorite new characters I've read about for this entire year. I feel like this is just such a strong romance. I would definitely recommend trying this series, and specifically this book. I think this might be my new favorite book in the series. And then my last 5 star to talk about is Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. And I've been wanting to read an Emily Austen book for so long, so I'm so glad that I enjoyed this. In this book, we're following Gilda, and Gilda is extremely anxious, and she basically gets in this situation where she goes to a church to try to seek out therapy, but the priest there thinks that she's actually coming there for a job interview, and she ends up taking the job despite the fact that she's not Catholic and is in fact a lesbian. And things are weird and chaotic. This has like extremely dark humor and is very much just like we're in Gilda's head, seeing how she reacts to different things. And it was very, very different than I thought it would be. However, this impacted me so much because as a very anxious person, Gilda really, really, I could really, really see myself in Gilda and some of the things she was doing, and then laugh at it, which is in turn kind of like laughing at myself and helping to make light of situations. So I really enjoyed this. I honestly can't explain why I think this is so good. It's just something special in my opinion. I really enjoyed it and I will definitely come back to it. But I don't think it's for everyone. I think if you're not anxious, you might not fully understand this. I mean, you definitely could still try it, but you might not fully understand it or get the humor also if you don't like dark humor. So, those are the 10 books that I read in the month of June. I would love to know down below what your favorite book is that you read in the month of June. And if you've made it all the way to the end of this video, you can let me know by leaving me a bunny emoji. I will see you all in the next one. Bye!